All right.
Hey, good afternoon to all of our market rebels out there. It's time again for a Coach's Corner. Stu, kind of a little reversal here from the last couple of days. I think we closed up, a good percent today?
1%-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, better than where we looked like we might have been heading.
Yeah, kind of flat to slightly up on the day, trending up, kind of gapped up a little bit and just hung in there and trended slightly up during the day.
Outstanding. Yep. So what I thought we would do today is a topic that we talked a little bit about it in Q&A. And I know we have found out that, and especially you and Scotty, when you're doing coaching, that people have no idea where their profits are being generated from.
But you just with no idea where their profits are. There's like 1,000 other things.
Yeah, or even the losses for that matter. But we've always said that if you don't know where your profits are coming from, it's just as bad as not knowing where your losses are coming from. You have to know what's being generated and why. Because, as we always teach, it's about risk management. It's not about managing profit. So we just wanted to kind of open up people's eyes. Again, this isn't meant to be a training session. It's just to expose you to a different topic here. Why it's so important to understand where the profits are coming from and exactly what that means.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, so let's do it. Let's jump in. Now I'm going to make it easy. We're going to leave Vega out for this presentation, but I'm doing it just to really make the point and to try to shorten it up. But we're going to start off, as always, with a little chalk talk. So again, this is a little.
And Bill, that's not to say that Vega is not important.
Oh, no. It's not saying, it's just that
important. We're just trying to streamline the process here a little bit.
Yeah, right? We're just trying to make the point, which we can do by looking at delta and gamma and theta. We'll take a look at.
Maybe we'll do the Vega side.
Yeah, we can do a Vega another time.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that because that's a big one. That is a big one.
Oh, that certainly can be.
That Vega thing took a couple years off of my trading career.
Oh yeah, and during COVID, it can be the biggest one.
It's big. Yeah, but we'll come back to it. Okay.
Yep. So we're going to start off, as we always do, with Chalk Talk for a little thought question. Now, I'm going to take a little different tack here. Normally, we come back at the end and answer it. But because this is a little more involved, we're going to start right off the bat answering it. But we still want you to just take a look at this and think. Do you at least understand what the question is asking? And would you be able to figure it out? And if you can't, that's going to be a hint that maybe there's some risks in the market that you're not aware of and you need to be. So here's the situation. So we got, according to a pricing model, $100 call worth at about 286. Delta, this is going to show up on your broker's platform or a pricing model. Delta shows up at 0.51 and some change.
Okay.
Gamma touch over 0.05 and theta at minus 0.0, let's call it minus 0.05.
5 cents, got
it. Right. Now the question is, the stock rises $3. Now we're going to assume that is right now. That's also part of the trick, not next week, because then we'd have to account for theta.
Okay.
So this is assuming an instantaneous. We're just isolating the move. No time has passed. No change in volatility. First question is, what's the value of the call? Now I know you can do this, and we were talking about this in Q&A today. I can look at that and tell you very closely what that call is going to change to. But more importantly, what percent of gains came from delta and what percent of gains came from gamma?
Yeah. So here's what I find. I find that people are way behind the eight ball on this.
Way
Behind. It's like, hey, let me wait till the market opens and I'll kind of see what I want to do.
Wait and see what happens then.
Right. And by that time, it could be up 5, 10, 15, down 5, 10, 15. And you're just kind of waiting to see, what you made or what you lost, or if you made or if you lost. I mean, you have no idea. And that's a huge.
And they always just assume it's from Delta. They're not understanding.
It may be, or it may not be. It may be something else.
True. In some cases, but in most cases, you're going to see if you have anything other than 0 for gamma and 0 for theta, it's not all coming from Delta. So we have to be able to look at this and at least get a handle on what percent of these profits are coming from where. Now, again, we're going to keep this streamlined. We're just going to talk about delta, gamma, and theta. For the first example, we're just going to do delta, gamma. So the title of today's presentation, rightfully so, where are your profits coming from? And again, what we're talking about is where are they coming from in terms of the Greeks? Delta, gamma, theta, vega, rho. Where are those profits being generated? And can you at least look at a option pricing model and figure that out? So let's start off with one here for starters. We're going to say that the stock is 100, strike is 100, volatility is 25%, no interest, 30 days to expiration. And if we do that, we get those numbers. $100 call at 286, delta at about 51, gamma 0.05, theta minus 0.05, let's call it. So the stock rises to 103. And the question is, what's the call worth? Now, I know you know how to do this. This is a calculation that I would do roughly in my head.
Yeah.
Again, we could always go to a pricing model if we wanted exact. But if we're looking for trying to figure out which strike to buy or to sell, we might want to just get an idea. So what I'm going to look for is the first thing, well, what if the stock goes up $3? So the first thing is to look at delta. And I'm just going to round this down to 51. I'm going to say we're going to get $3 times 51. At a minimum, we're going to get $1.53. But we also have to account for gamma because as that stock is changing, the delta is changing. It's not going to stay at 51. In fact, if we looked at this, it's going to pick up about 5, almost 6. It's going to go to delta 57. And of course, gamma will change, be a little bit lower. Maybe it's going to be 0.04. So then it's going to go to delta 61. It's constantly moving. Now, we've talked about this before. The way that you figure this out, we're going to take half a gamma. Now, to make the calculations easy, I'm just going to round that to 0.06. We divide that number by 2. We always divide by 2. We're saying that's the average rate of change between, let's say, 100 and 101. And that's going to equal 0.03. But now we have to take the change in the stock, which is 3 points, right? We're assuming it's going from 100 to 103. We're going to square that change, which is 9. So we have to take 9 times 3. There's an extra 27 cents that are going to be tacked onto that options price just from the changing deltas. So if you take $1.53 and 27 cents, that's going to give us roughly $1.80 or a total option price of $4.66. So that option is going to go from $2.86 to $4.66. So in this case, I can look and tell that about 85% of this change, that's $1.53 out of $1.80, is coming from delta, and therefore the balance is coming from gamma. Now that might look like, yeah, the bulk is coming from delta, but that will not always be true. And that's why you have to understand this stuff. All right, so that's the answer to the chalk talk. That's the way that you would go about and figure it out. So just remember, you're going to take half a gamma times the change in the stock's price, in this case, $3, square it, and multiply those out. Now, we have to be careful. We can't do too big of a range. Technically, even $1 is too big of a range, but it will get you close. So maybe after $2 or $3, we have to be a little bit careful, but it can at least get you an idea of what's going to happen to this options price.
Yeah, these are derivatives, and you have to have an idea of what it's going to look like when and if.
Absolutely true.
And if you can't, you're at the mercy of things that you have absolutely no control over, and it may put you in a bad spot. So
absolutely, you need to know that before you step into the trade.
Absolutely, any competent risk manager is going to have an idea of where am I going to land when the stock does, in this case, goes up $3.
Right.
What is this position going to look like? It's like, think about stock. If you're a stock guy, if the stock goes up $3, well, how much did it go up? Well, it went up $3. Well, how many shares did you buy? 100 shares. Well, now you can do the calculation of what your P&L would be when it goes up or down $3. And because this is a derivative, people get stuck. Well, I don't know how to do that. Well, you can figure it out. This is the math behind it. When Bill first presented the question, real quick, I kind of wrote down my answer, and here's my answer.
What you come up with?
See that, right? Can you see it?
I can't. I gotcha.
457, right? It's like a dime off. It's in the game.
Well, it's also because you were probably using different numbers, rounding differently.
I rounded. It was 50 right. And 5.
After bid ask spreads and commissions, we're not. Right. We're just trying to say roughly what's going to be.
Yeah, look, I just did it in like 2 seconds, right? I was just kind of winging it real quickly, and I rounded to make it easy for myself. But that's the game. The game is now I know if it goes up $3, this is where it's going to be, right? I can do it on the downside, on the upside, $2, $8, $60, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But as a risk manager, this is the kind of calculations that you need to evaluate, so you know where Absolutely. You are. Something happens.
So let's step it up a little bit. What if instead of making an instantaneous jump of $3, that maybe 3 days pass? This is part of our stress testing, part of our what if. And these are things you need to do. What if volatility goes up 5% or down 5%? What if time goes by 5 days, 10 days, 15, and just get an idea of the range of possible prices. Yeah. All right, so let's do the same problem here. That's how we started out, but notice we now have 27 days to go in our pricing model. So now we have to do, we have to take theta into account. So the stock we're going to assume is up 3. Delta, we know we're going to pick up about 51 times 3 points, or $1.53. That would be our minimum guess. We know that gamma, for the reasons we saw, again, 0.06 divided by 2 would give us 0.03 times 3 squared. That's the change in the stock's price squared. An additional 27 cents. So far, everything's the same. But now, Stu, what's our theta going to be for 3 days at 5 cents a piece?
Got to take 15 cents off the price.
Take about 15 cents. Is it going to be exact? No. Theta, all of your Greeks are for very small changes. It's okay. It's roughly. It's going to be somewhere around.
I know what everybody's thinking. I know everybody's thinking. Yeah, but the theta is on a curve, and
yes, it is.
The closer you get, the more it is, and all that is true.
All is true.
On the at the money, of course, the out of the monies and the in the monies are actually the reverse of that. But that's another topic. But yeah, all that is true, right? And that is part of the dynamics as well.
And that's also part of understanding, do we have 1 day to expiration? Well, we got 27 left. Yeah. It's probably going to be reasonably close for the next.
Reasonably close. Yeah. There's not.
So let's knock off 15 cents. And so now we have $1.53 plus 27 cents minus 15 cents. I would predict that call is going to go up about $1.65 to about $4.51.
Yeah. Now, think of it this way. You have a 30-day option and 3 days goes by. So you lost 3 days of 30. But if you have a 6-day option and 3 days goes by, you
lost half of it.
Right? Now you lost half, right? It's a big difference.
It's a very big difference.
And the decay, decay is going to be different. It's part of the deal.
So now here's where things get a little tricky. And I know we're going to have some of the math guys out there going to write and say, hey, this is not the way you do it. You really shouldn't even be dealing with percentages when you have negative numbers. But one of the ways that some people work around them is to just treat them all as positive numbers and then say, what's kind of the absolute value of these, and then take the percentages. So if we just pretend that that's positive 15, we add them all up, we would say that about 78.5% of this $1.65 is coming from delta, about 14% from gamma, and almost 8% from theta. Now, 8%, again, meaning that's an 8% deduction.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I have kind of an idea where most of the risk is coming from and to what degree. And that's just for the next short move in the stock.
Yeah.
Right? But you need to be able to look at that and figure that out.
And I know we said we weren't going to talk about it. I'm just going to throw it in for 5 seconds here. Suppose you had a change in implied volatility and you had a 50 cent Vega number, right? You may not have a 50-cent Vega number for a week option, but you might have a 50-cent Vega number for a 60-day option. I mean,
Sure.
it's very possible. And suppose you had 3 ticks of implied volatility, right? That's a $1.50. That's $1.50.
That's massive.
It's huge.
And a 3-tick move isn't all that much.
No,
that can happen quickly.
Right. It's this is not a discussion of should you own it or should you sell it or any of that. This is
right.
This is a discussion of you need to be aware that it's there.
Yeah, and back to using that example, if we were in a pricing model, we see that the price is $1.70, not counting cost of carry. We'd look at this and say, well, something must have changed in Vega. It's the only other thing I can move.
Yeah. We were just talking about that today on our 12 o'clock.
Yeah, we were.
With the GameStop, right? Remember the stock was up
yeah.
And the puts were up. How does that happen?
The puts were up. How does that happen? Well, volatility went to 650.
Yeah.
So been a while since we've seen those kind of numbers. All right, so let's move on to some other examples. And before we do, please remember, especially for everybody who's new, marketrebellion.com/get started. We have a host of great articles, videos, things to help you get started. And more importantly, to get on the right track. There's a lot of great information on YouTube, but there's a lot of really bad information.
Really bad.
One thing you want to do is to make sure you get on solid footing. So check that out, especially if you're new, help you to start your options trading careers. All right, now let's step it up a little bit. What if we have stock splits?
Oh, man.
That really change anything.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't know this because they come from a stock trading background. And they say, well, a stock split doesn't really change anything. It's like getting 2 10s for a 20. Doesn't change.
Technically, it doesn't on the stock side, but we're not.
Which is exactly on the stock side, but it's not really true on the option side.
And you know what? It's not really true on the stock side either. As far as movement, theoretically, it's supposed to all be the same, but
right.
Really,
yep. So we're going to talk about that, but we're going to show you an important part about stock splits that people often overlook or just don't even know about. So let's say that we have, and I made this one fun. I'm going to bump up the stock price just to make the point. So let's say back maybe Amazon when it was trading around $2,000,
right? Booking,
that's true. A lot of them have been up there. Volatility at 25, and at the rate that Nvidia is going, it'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Supermicro might be there.
Supermicro might be there too. Volatility 25%, interest 0%, 30 days to expiration. Pricing model says, bang, here are your outputs. And notice we have very little gamma.
Yeah.
Can be true because we've got a very expensive stock here. Got some pretty hefty theta. So the pricing model says
real quick on that. So think about gamma. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a $2,000 stock. These things are measured in dollar increments. Delta is per dollar movement. Gamma is per dollar movement. We're talking about 2000 to 2001. Nah, you're not going to really see any change in delta.
Correct. That's going to change. It's the same thing. That's a very good way to intuitively come up to why you really shouldn't have any gamma to speak of. Yeah. So let's just say the stock rises $1. The delta, we know you're going to pick up about 51 cents. And it's kind of, as you said, 51 cents on $57. Nothing to speak of. What's our gamma? Well, let's call this 0.003 divided by 2. $1 change this time squared, which of course 1 squared is 1. That's just going to tack on 0.00115 or 15 10,000ths of a penny. Let's call that nothing.
I'm going to call that nothing.
Let's call that nothing. So our $2,000 call should be roughly $57.68. That's the old price.
It's all delta.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we look at that and we break it down, we see that 99.7%, as Stu said, let's call that all delta, and the balance 0.3 from gamma.
Yeah.
This is primarily a delta risk. Right.
So here's what you got to know about that. You got to be able to look at the $2,000 call. I mean, the $2,000 stock. And you got to know that these very small increments in movement, the gamma is not even part of the discussion.
Not even part of the discussion.
I mean, at some point it will be, but
that's what
we're going to. Not part of the discussion. So it's pretty much all gamma.
Delta.
And then, of course, you have your theta as well. But for now, we're just talking about the delta.
Right. All right. So let's talk about that. Let's say that the company announces a 20-for-1 split, which is what Amazon did. And that's why I took this example. All right, now what's going to happen? Now we're going to see something interesting happen to gamma.
No.
that a lot of people overlook. And I
Yeah.
know you've got some nightmare stories from the trading
Yeah.
floor days.
Yeah.
So now what happens? Our stock
We
is
didn't
now
even know. We didn't know. We all of us looked at each other and we thought our sheets were wrong. We were all calling the risk
yeah.
guy from the clearinghouse and saying,
It's surprising how
"Made a
yeah
mistake."
it explodes. So we've got a now $100 stock, right? It was a $2,000 stock, 20 for one. Strike is now 100. It gets adjusted as well. 25 vol. We're going to assume everything else stays the same. What happens? Now the pricing model says that $100 call is 286. It's no longer $57, but we got to multiply it by 20 because now you have 20 contracts. So the total value of your position is still about the same.
And all he did, guys, was just divided by 20. That's all.
Right.
Price, the option.
Delta, we get the same delta times 20. We got about 10.3.
Yeah.
Gamma's
So
the
remember,
same.
before you had one contract and now you got 20.
Now you
They
got
both
20.
have delta. So what do you think is going to do to that delta
Right.
of the overall position?
Right. So your gamma is 1.11. Your theta is now 0.95. So just for reference, let's bring up what we had. So we had a position that was worth 57.17. And this is due to rounding, but the value of the position hasn't changed.
Yep.
Deltas are the same, 51.43, 51.43, 0.0028. But look at the gamma. We went from 0.003 to 0.0556 times 20.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. It's
So
crazy.
what's happening here? What happens, the thing you have to understand as a trader, when you get a stock split, your gamma goes up by the square of the split.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means our split was 20. That's the factor. We square that, that's 400.
Yeah.
Your gamma goes up 400-fold on this.
Is that a lot or a little, Bill?
We can call that a lot. Now, of course, we could get into a whole different discussion of saying, well, but now the stock theoretically has 1/400th of the ability to move.
Please.
And again, theoretically, it should come out the same. But what if it doesn't? What if the
But
stock
it doesn't.
gaps
I'm
down
telling you right now, it
5 points for some reason?
doesn't.
Right. So now let's look at it.
But it's not perfect. No.
Right. So the stock is up $1. What's happening to our delta? We're going to pick up now $10.20 or $1,020 from a $1 move in delta. It used to be $51. Now we're going to pick up 60 cents in gamma, used to be 0. Our total position is going to increase to 68 or up by $10.80. Now, in this case, 94% of that move came from delta and about 6% from gamma. But it really surprises people because they went from, like we just said, let's call it 0 for gamma, and now it's having a very real effect.
Yeah.
So not only do you have a lot more shares, or at least controlling a lot more shares, you've got a ton more gamma. So if it sounds confusing here, let's take a look at it from a stock perspective. If you had 100 shares before the split, this is your risk profile. After the split, you've got 2,000 shares in red. Look at how relatively flat your old position looks. It looks completely harmless compared to the new one. You need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Things are going to start getting
I don't even
unstable.
I don't even look at the upside. I'm looking at the downside.
Oh yeah, things are going to start
Bill
getting
said,
real unstable.
Look how much money you'd make on the upside when after it splits 21. Now you got $1,000 instead of whatever it was, 50, right? But I'm thinking like, well, Christ, what happens if it goes the other way?
Right.
I'm buried.
You're buried. And we've got these very unstable deltas. Now, visually, we can kind of see a little bit what you were talking about. Here's our call with a price at about $51. And you can see the red line, the current curve, is relatively straight. But look what happens when we split it. We become a $100 stock, priced at roughly about 3. You can see, now again, relatively speaking, we could make the argument that they're the same because the $2,000 stock has a much better chance of moving $1 than a $100 stock. But if it doesn't, look at you can see the amount of curvature in that virtually straight through here. But here's the more telling picture. Check this one out. Here's the gamma curves of a $100 call. This is one call. Here's the gamma curve for the $2,000 call. Now remember, you're going to have to multiply this red curve by 20. And the reason I didn't do it here, guess what it did to that curve right there? Buried it. Couldn't even see it. Completely vanished. That's how much your gammas have changed, relatively speaking. So you need to be aware this is going to start to get potentially very unstable. And if this is why we talk about trimming positions, rolling, maybe rolling up to an equivalent old number of deltas, lots of different strategies, but you need to understand why and where to look. So I think this is a really telling picture right here.
Yeah, just remember that square thing, that little 2 in that equation.
Yep.
Two for 1, it's 4. 20 to 1, 400. I mean,
400, your gamma is going to go up.
It's big.
It is going to be very big. All right, so let's do some others. And always before
especially in the beginning, like kind of right after the split, as the stock's trying to find its legs.
Correct. That's when you might get another.
You get that little bit of volatility. Now it's cheaper. People want to get in, and people. There could be some increased volatility right after the split as it's just trying to find its way in its new world. And you got these buku deltas working, and maybe they go against you, and might shake you out of what you really want to be in a long position. So you gotta be careful.
Yep. So quick reminder, marketrebellion.com/get started to help you get started understanding topics just like this. All right, now let's take a look at a different example. Let's take a look at a covered call. So let's say our stock is 100. And as most people do, they say, "Oh, let me sell the 115 call."
Really, Bill?
Because
15
I don't
points out of the money.
I don't want to get called out. I'm gonna pick up the free money. All right. So the pricing model says that call's worth a whopping 7 cents.
Or they say, "I want to sell it at 115, so I'm going to sell the 115 call."
Right. That's my target price. Then I'll pick up 7 cents for it.
Okay.
So delta's 0.02, nothing to really speak of. Gamma's even less, about 0.01. Theta's not much to speak of. So now let's say that the stock goes up $3. From delta, we have $3 times 0.03. But remember, this is going to be a negative to us because it's a short call. It's a positive to the long call. It's a negative to us.
Yeah.
That by itself. So now we're also long the stock for a covered call. So I know that if I think of this as a checking account, I've got +3 coming in from the stock. But I've got -9 cents coming in from delta. What about my gamma? Gamma's about 0.01 divided by 2, 0.005. $3 move squared. Not much to speak of, but about another 4.5 cents. But notice it's half of delta. Relatively speaking, these out of the money options can move. Those gammas can start to affect it. Relative. So the total P&L is up 287. That's just 3 from the stock, -9 cents, -4.5 cents. But 96% of that came from the stock. The 3% down was from delta, and the 1.5% down was from gamma. Now, again,
this is where somebody would come in and say, "I love this covered call strategy. Look how much money I made."
And that very good. That was my point. People look and they'll say, "Man, I'm so lucky I sold this call. Look how beautifully it's working up. I made 287 today."
Yeah.
That was all for your covered call had nothing to do with it. In fact, all it did is it subtracted.
You gave away an obligation at some level and made nothing from it.
And so most of that move really had nothing to do with the covered call. It was a stock move.
Stock. Yeah, it
was all delta at that point. So graphically, here's what it looks like. Here's the strike at 115. That's where our bend is. There's our current curve. So remember, the stock is down here. If we let it rise to 103, all right, if you look at that red line compared to the black, you can't even tell the difference.
Can't see it. Is it there?
You can't even see it. Why? Because it's the same.
Because it's the same.
Or maybe plus or minus of 1 or 2 deltas. But for the most part, it's all deltas in there. See, you're not going to start seeing those effects until up in here. Yeah. You need to be aware of that. Where
and you should know that going in.
You should. You absolutely should know that. So let's do that. Let's look at covered call example number 2. Now I'm going to change the strike to 100. Instead of selling the 115, we're going to bring it down to the at the money strike. Everything else the same. Pricing model says $100 call, again, 286, delta 51, gamma about 0.06, theta 0.05. Stock rises $3. What happens now? Well, we know that we're going to pick up roughly 51 deltas. But remember, that's a negative test. We're going to lose or give away some of our $3 gain to the tune of $1.53. Gamma, 0.06 divided by 2 times $3 move squared, we're giving away another 27 cents. So that's $1.53 and 27 cents is $1.80. So our total gain is the $3 from the stock minus the $1.80 from the covered call. We have a net gain of $1.20.
Yeah, this is where people say, "Oh, this covered call strategy stinks. I'm not doing this anymore."
Right. Well, 63% of that move was from the stock. 32% of that was given away from Delta, and about 6% was given away from Gamma. Well, we need to know where we are on the curve. So take a look. Here's the stock up here at 100. And if we let it move to 103, look at the difference now between these curves. Very different. See, if we bought the stock by itself, that's our curve. But look at how much we've given away. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying you need to be aware of where those profits are coming from. Why did we do it then? Because of the downside hedge, not because it's the target where we want to sell. But what I need to be aware of is this little pinch. How is that going to be affected as the stock moves? Eventually, there's going to become a point where it's not worth it to hold. It doesn't matter what you receive for it. It doesn't matter if you receive $20 for this call. There will come a point when the incremental amount that you're going to receive is relatively small compared to the position. That's the time to get out of it or to roll it out. You hear John and Pete talk about that all the time. After this, I'm going to close this one and roll it out, kind of ladder these things. That's why they do it. There comes a point where it's just not worth holding. So we hope this gives you a good visual for all of you out there.
Here's a quick application of that. I have
Sure.
a covered call. I have a covered call, and it's now in the money.
Right.
And I want to get the stock. I kind of want to lose the stock, so I'll just let it get called away. And the call is trading at parity.
Yeah.
It's valued at parity. The put side is nothing.
Nothing.
Dime or something really small. And there might be a couple of weeks left, and they're just kind of like hold.
Let me wait it out. Dumb.
For nothing. Let me wait it out. Let me wait it where
No.
you for no benefit. All
For
the
no
risk,
benefit.
all the
I'm going to
risk
hold all the risk for no benefit.
for no benefit. All you got to do is just think outside the box and do the unwind. Do this. It's called the synthetic, right? Sell the stock, buy the call back. There's no more benefit, so you got to get out of it. And that's what Bill's talking about here,
Right.
That's that becomes a danger without any upside potential. So who's doing that? Right, those who are uninformed and uneducated about the product, which is kind of why we're here.
Yeah. So as a conclusion, again, we're not going to cover the answer to the chalk talk because it was involved. We answered it really in the first slides. But the thing is just to do a recap here. And I think the reason that I wanted to do this for a topic is that we hear this so much from people. Everybody's, what do you think the stock is going to do? Let me step in. Let me do this covered call. But they never think, where are the profits coming from? And again, this wasn't designed to be a tutorial and to show you all the ins and outs. It's to make you understand a concept that if you looked at this and you're going, I have no idea what they're talking about, well, then you learned a lot. You learned that there's still stuff you need to learn. You don't want to be doing these option strategies, not understanding how those profits or losses are being generated. Stu, any closing comments on that?
A lot of people say to me, Bill, like, I had no idea that I didn't know what I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of the learning curve here. You got to kind of figure out what you don't know so you can learn some things, so you can be better manager of the position, of the risk. And that's what we try and do.
Of the risk and not the profits. So we hope that gave you some things to think about, as always, or just about picking up little tidbits. And if you want to learn more, again, please visit us, marketrebellion.com/get started. Or for those of you who are really looking to take your options trading to the next level, or maybe you're just beginning and just want to make sure you're not stepping into traps, give us a call. You can hook up with Stu or Scotty as a coach, and they will do one-on-one trainings with you and actually show you all the ins and outs, maybe even help you with a portfolio design or whatever would help you. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you picked up some good tips, and please join us next Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern for more Coach's Corner. We'll see you then.
All right. Good one. See ya.